Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another luxurious episode of the Single Parents Podcast. This is the podcast for anybody whose life may have turned out a little less than traditional. I'm just going to apologize right off the jump because I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this, but there's like some dudes doing some like road work or construction or something right outside of my house. And I record this show in my living room right next to my front door. So I don't know if you can hear, they have like a generator going or something. So I just apologize right off the bat if you hear some background noise in this episode. If you had no idea, if you couldn't even tell, then I'm sorry for wasting your time by saying all of this. But I just want to make sure we're all cool because, again, I'm just a real life single dad just doing this thing in his house by himself. I don't have a fancy studio. I don't have fancy soundproof walls everywhere. I'm just not there yet. But maybe as the show grows and expands and moves forward, we can get there. That way I don't even have to worry about what's going on outside of my front door. And if you would like to help the show get there, then there's a few things that you could do to make sure that happens. The first thing that you can do is just share the podcast. Share the podcast with a friend, with a family member, with a neighbor, with your local construction workers. Make sure we just spread the podcast around so it gets out to more people. So not only does the show grow practically, but we're also able to bring in different voices, different perspectives, different points of view on this single parent journey that many of us are on. So you can do that. Second thing you can do is just make sure you yourself have subscribed and downloaded the show on your favorite podcast hosting platform. Just turn on automatic downloads. We're on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Do all the things just to make sure you yourself don't miss any episodes in the future. And then last but not least, if you think the show is worthy of this, then maybe consider rating the podcast 5 stars, the highest rating possible on your favorite podcast hosting platform. That way the algorithms out there know the show is legit and it passes it along to more people. All right, let's get into that good.
Something to relate to.
So I was doing the thing that I normally do throughout the week, especially when my girls are off at their mom's house and it's just kind of me at my own house doing my own thing. I was perusing social media, going through all of my friends' stories, seeing what's up, seeing what the talk of the town is, kind of getting involved in the chatter here and there. And I came across one of my friends who's a single mom. She posted something and I thought was pretty interesting and something I wanted to share that should lead into a conversation I think I actually have wanted to have for a hot minute now, because as I've just kind of also looked big picture around the internet surrounding the conversation of single parent life, I kind of seen what we're going to talk about pop up on a few occasions, so it kind of seems like this might be something that maybe quite a few of us as single parents are kind of working through out there. So I thought this would be a good springboard into that conversation. So here is what her post said. It wasn't her post. She shared a reel, an Instagram reel from somebody else, and this is what it said. When people compliment me for being such a strong single mother, but deep inside I feel guilty for choosing the wrong person to be their father. Let me read that again. When people compliment me for being such a strong single mother, but deep inside I feel guilty for choosing the wrong person to be their father. So specifically what I wanted to kind of jump into in response to that Instagram reel was maybe not so much the aspect of choosing I chose the wrong person to be my kids' mom or choose the wrong person to be my kids' dad. I don't really want to get into that very specific aspect of what that post said. Maybe we'll talk about that on a future episode of the show, maybe with a guest or two. But I specifically wanted to talk about the reality of guilt, because that's kind of what the meat and potatoes of that post was about, right? If I really break it down to the core, basically what that post was saying is that, hey, people look at me as a single mom, they see all the things I'm doing, they see that I'm handling my business and I'm kicking some ass and I'm taking my kids there and I'm doing the budgeting thing and I'm also working and then I'm maintaining a house, and people will say like, hey, you're a strong single mom, or in my case, you're a strong single dad, you're a good dad, you're blah, 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 blah. So externally, that's kind of what we're taking in maybe from people's perspectives as they're looking from the outside. But what she was saying is internally, as awesome it is as it is to hear those kind words from people, I'm actually battling with a lot of guilt, because of, in this case in particular, because I feel like I chose the wrong person to be my kids' father. So I wanted to talk about specifically, that aspect of guilt that we often maybe have to work through as single parents sometimes. As awesome as we are, as hot as we are, there's still realities of the single parent life that we just need to navigate. That's just part of it, right? Maybe not even just for single parents. Like, I'm sure people in general obviously have to work through aspects of guilt. But for our context, looking at what the reality of guilt does in our lives, or maybe how it can play out in our lives. First of all, I think it just can come in many different forms for many different reasons, right? Guilt. So it could come from, as that post said, maybe some relational mistakes that we made in the past. For me, actually, I think in a couple episodes ago, I talked about the fact that sometimes I will feel this need to always go big and extreme and awesome and fun with my kids every time I have them, because maybe I have a sense of guilt in the fact that I don't have them with me every single day of the month. I do the whole shared custody co-parenting thing, so I only have them technically 2 weeks out of the month. And so maybe because I feel guilty about that reality for them, I feel the need to like go extravagant and go overboard whenever they are with me. So that's how it plays out in my life. Maybe for some people it might be the sense of guilt of like, hey, like I'm a single parent, and it would be nice to go out and to meet somebody and to date and to bring somebody else into my life, but I kind of put up walls and I don't really want to get into that because I feel guilty maybe bringing a stranger around my kids, and I feel guilty that my kids have to start new with this brand new person. Or maybe it's guilt as far as the practical realities of being a single parent. I feel guilty that I have to bring my kids to work with me all the time because I don't have another person at the house who can hang out with the kids while I go work, or while I go do this, or while I go do that. Or maybe because I'm a single parent and I have to spend a lot of my time working, bringing in income, one parent household income financially. That means I got to dedicate a lot of time to work, one job, maybe sometimes two jobs, and so I can't afford to take my kids out to do this, or we can't go on these vacations, or we don't have a whole lot of extra time to do some things that maybe my kids see their friends doing and other families are doing, or whatever. So anyways, guilt can come in many different forms in the reality of a single parent's life, and there's many other examples I probably most definitely didn't get into. Maybe things that, as I'm talking about guilt, you're thinking about your life and how the impact of guilt has hit you specifically. And if that's the case, I would love to hear your story, your perspective on this conversation. You could always DM us on all the socials, or use the email, thesingleparentspodcast@gmail.com. So feel free to do that. But anyways, guilt can play a lot of different factors. And so when I was thinking this week about this conversation that we're having today, I think the big thing that stood out to me right away when it comes to working through guilt is the fact that I don't think this sense of guilt that we often feel is something that needs to be buried or just completely getting rid of, or just being told like, just don't feel that feeling. Just you're doing awesome. You're doing so great. Just put that out of your head. Just ignore that feeling. Just whatever. Just basically saying like, hey, just kind of pretend that sense of guilt's not there, or just make sure that sense of guilt goes away so you can focus on this, so you can focus on all these other things. I don't think that's necessarily true or healthy, because I think that for me, using my guilt as a way to kind of do some self-evaluation, I think can be healthy if you do it properly, and if you do it in again, a healthy maybe mindset. I think it could be good, because for me, whenever I am feeling guilty about some things, when it comes to parenting, there's some things that I can do with that feeling, that emotion, that mindset. Number one is I can do like a little self-assessment as to why I may be feeling specifically guilty about this. Like, why am I in this particular situation feeling so much guilt and feeling like I am just not doing enough, or feeling like I'm dropping the ball or whatever? And then I can kind of, again, do some assessment, right? To see if there's something that does truly, genuinely need to be adjusted in my life. Because as hot and awesome as we are as single parents, we're not perfect. Like, there's growth that still needs to take place in our lives, and there's things we still need to figure out, and there's roads we still need to navigate and progress on. Like, we're not robots. We're not going to 100% finish downloading like at the drop of a hat. So every single day, we're still going to be growing, still going to be learning. So when I am feeling this emotion, instead of like, yeah, just let me get rid of that, or bury it, or just forget about that, I can stop and be like, well, okay, is there any truth to why I'm feeling guilty right now that can lead to some positive change and some positive growth and to some adjustments in my life? So for me, going back to the conversation of me always needing to be extravagant with my kids because I feel guilty that I don't have them all the time, I can stop and I can assess, and I can, number one, just break it down in truth and be like, hey, like, you're feeling guilty maybe because of time that you have with your kids. And so what can you do to take that on, and then to realize that, and to process that, and then to make some adjustments? So one thing I have just been working on is saying like, hey, I'm feeling guilty because of this. It's not guilty that I can't do enough for my kids. It's about the time. I feel guilty that I don't have a whole lot of time with my kids compared to maybe some other parents out there, quote unquote full-time parents out there, when it comes to schedules. So what I can do is I can really know that about myself, and then when I do have my kids, really strive to make the best use of that time as possible. And no, that doesn't have to mean going out and spending money and doing cool things that are going to look good on social media, or making everything big and extreme and fun 24/7. It just means realizing that when I do have them, those 14 days out of the month, I can be as present, as intentional, as focused on my relationship with them as possible. So that way, even though I send them off to their mom's house the next week, hopefully I can still feel secure and confident in the time I did spend with them, because I really made sure that quality was there, even though the quantity of days I have with them might not be ideal, at least for me. So just, and you see how I'm able to work through that and kind of make that adjustment. Or it might be for you like, hey, like, I feel guilty because I feel like my baby daddy or my baby mama I just feel like I just totally dropped the ball there. And so now my kid is going to grow up either just straight up not knowing the other parent because maybe they were just insane or got arrested or on drugs or whatever it is. Or maybe they do know the other parent, but they're just a mess and they're just in and out and it's just hard. And I just feel guilty because I have this unhealthy person in my kids' life for the rest of their life now. Maybe one thing that you can do is, number one, just assess that reality and be like, hey, like, there's nothing I really can do to go back and to change what happened, right? Like, you don't have a time machine, like, you don't have a genie. Your reality is your reality. So as much as it may not, again, be completely ideal in your mindset, this is kind of what it is. So let me stop. Let me kind of take in the guilt, like I feel guilty that this is the situation and whatever, but then do that assessment of like, okay, well, now that I kind of went through that before, Now what I'm going to do to kind of work through some of this guilt is to make sure that I have healthy boundaries and healthy standards set in place for myself and for my kids and for dating and stuff like that. So that way in the future, we can avoid putting ourselves in situations like this, that we're not falling into the same traps, that we're not being attracted to the same unhealthy, toxic people, and then move forward. And then hopefully through some of that self-assessment, reevaluate relationships, or maybe even get into healthy relationships in the future, to where you're not constantly just sitting there beating yourself up about your situation, but you're able to take your situation and adjust in a healthy way and move forward in a healthy, positive way. So, and I could go through many examples of how to like kind of navigate that, but I think that, in my opinion, is a lot healthier than either A, sitting and just constantly beating yourself up about the guilt that you feel and just constantly feeling like trash and that you're not enough and so on and so forth. There's that option A. Or option B, just totally trying to get rid of your guilt or trying to numb your guilt or trying to pretend like your guilt isn't there. No, I think a healthy balance of acknowledging your guilt, working through your guilt, processing your guilt, and then making healthy adjustments to move forward in a positive way is the right step, is the right way to go about it. Because then you are managing your guilt, you are in control of your guilt, you're not letting it control you, or you're not trying to be inauthentic about the fact that you are battling and navigating guilt. You are in control of your guilt. It doesn't need to be the other way around. And so if you start maybe forming some patterns of getting into rhythms to where maybe you are navigating your guilt in this way, when the inevitable comes and you're kind of feeling guilty again and you're kind of feeling down again, you're kind of in a season where you're kind of just like, yeah, I just, man, what's going on? Then you're able to stop and assess and be like, okay, hold on. All right, I'm feeling a lot of guilt right now. What's going on? Let's process this. Where is this coming from? Let's be realistic about this. Let's take in some truth. Let's take in. So, a lot of times with guilt, and I think the post I shared kind of like hints at this. It's kind of like life in general. It's kind of like I don't know if you ever posted something like on social media or YouTube or something like that. A lot of the times people who do it a lot often say, like, you can get 100 positive comments about your video or about your content, but if there's 1 or 2 negative comments out of that 100, you're going to fixate and you're going to think about those 2 negative comments or that 1 negative comment out of 100. You could get the 99 most amazing things, but you see that 1 comment that says that sucked or whatever. It's just human tendency to latch onto that and to focus on that. And so people will be like, well, oh man, and start beating yourself up over 1 negative thing out of 99 other positive things it's just human nature. And I think even with battling guilt could be a lot like that, because as that post was talking about, like, people see a lot of positive stuff in us a lot of the times, our strength, our commitment, our just ability to navigate a whole lot of rough waters, and yet we can often dismiss that, like the 99 positive comments, and just because of our guilt or even shame or whatever, focus on just the negative aspects of like how we're dropping the ball or how we've messed up or how we're not enough. And it's just going to be easy to dive into that. So when we're working through guilt, filling in some of those holes with truth, to be like, yeah, I could have handled things better. I need to make some adjustments. But as my friends, as my family, as my coworkers, as whoever's telling me and reminding me often, there's a lot of things that I am doing well, and those things I need to have confidence in. And I'm not perfect, and there's things that I need to still progress in. But I'm doing pretty good in a lot of these other areas. So I need to not be so quick to forget that as well. So, anyways, guilt. How have you navigated it? How are you navigating it? What does that look like in your life? Once again, use the socials, use the email, do what you got to do, share your voice. I definitely would love to hear from you when it comes to this conversation.
Something to think about.
All right, you know what? Enough is enough. It's time to normalize being single. Yes, that's right. I'm going with my main point right off the jump because I'm super excited to talk about this. I've been thinking about having this conversation with you all for days, and I'm really anxious and happy and all the things to get into it because I think there's so much truth that can come from this conversation. I think this conversation can lead to a lot of mini conversations, and I think there might be some people out there, to be honest, who might not like to acknowledge this conversation, who may not like this conversation in general for reasons we'll get into, but normalizing being single, I think that is a fantastic idea. And I actually started thinking through this idea after actually watching a TikTok video from @Robbie'sMoonMusic. That's @Robbie'sMoonMusic. I'll put the for his Instagram account in the description of this episode below. Actually, I'm just going to play the video that I saw. I'll just let you hear from Robbie himself, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so here is the video. Hopefully you can hear this.
Sometimes I wonder how much happier we would be as people if we just made being single the norm. Like right now, the norm is like everyone eventually is going to find their special person and grow old with them, whatever, and that's great. But like, because of that, I feel like once people start feeling that pressure of like, oh my God, I have to find my person, they just enter relationships with people that they aren't even like connected to, and it's always very unhealthy and toxic. And then there's that shame you feel when you are single of like, oh my God, I'm undesirable. Everyone else in my life is in a relationship and I'm not, like, I'm such a loser. But if the norm in society was just to be single, then every person could just be happy on their own. And then if they do happen to stumble upon like their soulmate and the person who's really good for them, then they can enter a relationship with that person and they'll know like this is a good relationship because I'm not entering it just for the sake of being in a relationship. Like I actually want this. This also would require us as people to seek out more friendships and community with others. Like I feel like this fixation our society puts on being in a romantic relationship actually makes us so much more individualistic. It just gives us an excuse to say bye to everyone else. So many people, they settle down with their partner and then, they stop hanging out with their friends. It's pretty normal, right? They stop going out in the community and meeting new people. And then they reach middle age and they're all very depressed and lonely. And the only person that they have a relationship with at this point is their partner. And now they're making their partner crazy because they can't meet every social need that the other has. All the while, all the single people are really fucking lonely too because all their boot up friends will only hang out with their partner. So now everybody is just fucking miserable and lonely as shit. If being single was the norm, all the single people would be happier and all the people who decide to be in relationships would probably be happier too.
I'm doing a round of applause because I loved that video. I wish you could sometimes like videos on TikTok like 1,000 times, because if I could, then I would for that video. I stand and say yes and amen to everything Robbie said in that video. Oh my gosh, yeah. So for some clarification as to what my response and perspective is to the statement, hey, let's normalize being single. Basically, my big point is, and I think Robbie said this in the video, but in our Western American specific society and culture, the idea of meeting somebody and falling in love and getting married and doing this and doing that is kind of like the social norm, right? In a lot of ways. And you're watching Disney movies and you're hearing it maybe from family and friends and just TV, media, culture in general. That's just kind of what it is. And so even though a lot of us have this true desire to meet somebody and get into a relationship and maybe get married, and that, which is good and which is awesome, which is healthy. And I don't even think Robbie's point and my point is like, we shouldn't have those desires. It's bad to have those desires. It's like, hey, like, let's just get rid of the idea of dating and relationship and marriage in general. That's not what either of us, I don't believe, is saying. But what we're saying is, because of a lot of those cultural expectations come in and add on top of the desire that maybe we have, it just kind of produces a little extra like pressure, if you will. And it kind of makes a lot of people who are single feel like, oh shoot, like I have this desire to get married and do this, but instead of maybe naturally waiting for it to happen and to naturally and organically meet somebody and to date for a while, to get to know somebody for a while, it's like, well, I'm just not enough. as a person, as a man or a woman, unless I'm in a relationship. I need to do this because this is just what I'm supposed to do. I'm 30 years old. I'm 40 years old. I'm getting up there. I'm supposed to be married by now. I'm supposed to have a house and 2.5 kids by now. And so it just becomes an extra sense of a pressure that we sometimes take on. And so, as Robbie was saying, what will end up happening is instead of naturally and organically getting into a relationship, or maybe even taking some time to work on ourselves personally and in our friendships and our family dynamics, and continue to maybe use our 20s or even 30s to grow and to take care of ourselves and to know ourselves and get our mental health right and to do all these things, we're just like, all right, well, I'm old enough. I need to start dating. I need to start getting into a relationship. Like, it needs to happen now. And then there can be a lot of unhealth that just comes from that. Again, just to be super, super clear, I'm not saying that getting into a relationship is wrong or bad, or every relationship that everybody enters into is going to fall apart or it's not going to work if you don't do it a certain way. Like, it's just, I think you should know hopefully you know what I'm saying. I know there's going to be people in the comments regardless, or in my emails regardless, saying like, you shouldn't talk about normalizing being single. We need to stand on traditional family values, and people need to get married, and women in particular need a man, and men are supposed to be doing this, and this is why America's getting soft, is because blah, 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 blah. Whatever, that's going to happen regardless, and I'll, have conversations with those people when those comments come. But for, I think, hopefully the rational people out there listening to this, you kind of get where we're coming from. We're kind of saying like, hey, if you want to be in a relationship and you want to do that and you found your person and you're ready to go, then green light, go for it. You do you. We love it. We love to see it. Invite me to the wedding. I love weddings. But if you're not there, or maybe you just don't even want to be there. Did you know that there's actually some people out there who just are like, hey, that's cool for you, but for me, I just want to be single. Like, I'm fine being single. I'm fine doing my own thing. I can get my needs met. I can hang out. I can do this. I just don't want to be married, or at least don't want to be in a long-term committed relationship. Did you know there's people out there who choose that lifestyle? And did you know that's okay? They're not freaks. They're not missing out. They're not breaking down the country. Did you know that? So I'm gonna probably do like a whole episode talking about this, because I've kind of alluded to it on a few episodes even up until now. So I'll do a full episode talking about this later. But so I grew up in a very like church culture setting. I'll just say that because you say religious and there are people out there like, oh, well, it's not religion, it's a relationship with God and blah, blah, whatever. We'll just say church culture setting. And in that particular setting, there would be times, and I honestly, I probably, to admit it, to be super real, I probably have contributed to this mindset, this pressure that people get put under. I probably said some of these things, so if I ever did to you, I'm super sorry. Definitely progressing a lot still myself. But I've seen it happen where, like, especially for women, like a single woman will come into like the church or come into whatever, and she'll introduce herself to some people like, hi, my name is Julie. And people are like, okay, cool. Hi, Julie. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And she could be like, hey, yeah, I'm going for my doctorate. I am volunteering at this soup kitchen. I am building my own house with my own bare hands. I'm this and that and this and that. She could say all these cool, legit things about herself. But if she gets to the point, and oh, by the way, I'm single. I'm not dating anybody. I'm not married. What usually happens instantly, even though she's talking about all these cool other things she's doing, what usually happens is the response will be like, oh, you're single. Well, there's Mike over in the sound tech booth, and he's single too, so you should go talk to him, and I'm going to hook you up, or blah, 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 blah. And I know oftentimes the intention behind that response is usually good, right? Like the people who respond to single people like that, they're coming from a good spot. But it's just, now thinking back, it's interesting the fact that a person like the example I gave with Julie, instead of focusing on her as an individual, as a person, she probably was instantly made to feel like, oh, okay, well, I need to now go out and I guess I need to go talk to Mike in the sound tech booth because this is just what I'm single, he's single. I guess this is just what we're supposed to do. Instead of normalizing being single and letting Julie herself tell you if she's interested in dating somebody or pursuing somebody, and then maybe you can go introduce her to Mike in the sound tech booth. But to instantly suggesting that, hey, Julie, you're single, you need to go meet somebody else in the church who's single, that's the type of pressure and false expectations that you're on. Or just saying like, hey, to a single person, like, hey, like when are you going to get married? When are you going to start dating? Instead of asking the question like, hey, like, are you interested in that? Is that a desire that you have? Is that something you want to pursue? You see, there's two big differences between those two questions. When are you going to get married? When are you going to start dating somebody? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? Versus, is that something you want to do? Is that what you're interested in? Where are you at? You're in yourself, like blah, blah. You see very different when assuming like, hey, when is this going to happen? That's where the pressure comes from. That's where those unhealthy realities come from of like, oh, when am I supposed to do that? I guess I need to. So I'll just go pick the first person that I end up dating and we'll date for a few months and we'll get married because that's what you're supposed to do, versus like, you know what, when do I want that? Am I in a healthy spot to jump into that right now? Do I have career goals and other ambitions that I want to set up first? Actually, yeah, I remember people who like go through school, like big programs, and the pressure still, even for those individuals. Again, a lot of this I've seen in the relation to like women in particular. But to be like, hey, like, okay, you can still date, you can still do this, even though you're finishing up your this and that. And they'll have to sometimes push back and be like, well, like, I gotta study. Like, I don't have time to date right now. I'm trying, maybe after I get my degree, maybe after this. But instead of that being celebrated, I've seen it happen times where that's just kind of almost pushed back on in a little bit. And then, as Robbie said, that kind of leads into some social aspects too that can come into play, to where we're so fixated on dating and finding a person, and then once we find that person, because that was basically our whole life was just getting to this point. Now that is our whole life. And so we haven't really taken care of some friendships we needed to take care of. We haven't taken care of ourselves in a way we need to take care of. It's just the whole cycle. It's just the whole thing. So we're going to start normalizing being single for the sake of the people out there who just haven't organically, naturally, in a healthy way found their person yet. And to let them know that's okay, babe, you take your time and you get there when you get there. Or for the people who just don't want that in life, at least for right now, want to focus on themselves or other things, to let them know that's cool. You do you, and you do what you got to do. And if it comes, it comes. If not, it not. But you're not a freak for being single. You're not less than for being single. You're not a failure for being single. You're okay for being single. You're okay and hot for being single.
Something to be encouraged by.
So lastly today, I want to specifically give a shout out and give some encouragement to people who are technically married, are in a relationship, have a partner, have the ring on the finger, have all those things, but often feel like as if they are a single parent. Maybe because the other person, the spouse, just isn't really around the house very often. Maybe because the spouse or the other parent doesn't want to be around the house very often. Whatever the situation may be, you're married or you're in a very committed long-term relationship. So maybe technically on paper, you're not single. I'm using air quotes. You're not single. But you might as well be, right? Because it kind of feels like that more often than not. Just wanted to give some love to those people, those married single parents out there. Because I was thinking a lot about the community I live in. So I live in, actually it's a gold mine town, believe it or not. Not with like pickaxe and like Snow White and the Seven Doors style, but like big machinery and guys and girls going down underground and digging up dirt and all that stuff. And so oftentimes the schedules for that type of work can be pretty intense. Oftentimes it's a lot the men, but there's women who are doing it too. They'll spend days off underground or doing their thing, and then maybe they'll come home, but they got to sleep and basically get up and go back to work, and they have so many days on, and then they get a couple days off, and then they switch to days, and then it goes to nights, and just crazy schedules. And there's nothing bad and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just what they do for work. That's just the reality. They're not, trying not to be around the house. That's just how they pay their bills. And so oftentimes it's the wife who's at home, but there's exceptions, but oftentimes the other parent who's at home, because the spouse is working these crazy gold mine schedules, they often feel like it's just kind of them and the kids, right? Like, if the other parent is home, usually they're sleeping because they just worked a 12, 13, 14-hour shift, or they're off at work. Or if they have their days off, they're trying to recuperate from being at work for so many days in a row, doing a hard, intense job, that they're just not fully even mentally present, or it takes them a day or two to get present. And then by the time they feel like themselves, it's time to start packing up lunch and strapping on the boots because your shift is starting back again the next day. You got to go to bed. And so it can just, it can be tough for a lot of people. And a lot of times the parent at home with the kids can feel alone, can feel single, can feel like it's just them when it comes to the household realities. Or I was just listening to another show. This woman was talking about the fact that her husband basically is okay with just going to work, coming home, maybe seeing the kids for a little bit, but then going out with the boys and going out to all these parties for the company and doing all these things. And it's been kind of normalized, the fact that like, okay, well, I'll go out and I'll do this because I'm working and I'm paying the bills, but I won't like really invite you because somebody has to stay at home with the kids. So you stay home with the kids, and it's hard to get a sitter and we don't have family nearby. So if I want to go out, I'll go out, but you just stay at home with the kids because that's just kind of what you do. And maybe every, couple of months or so, like I'll let you go out and have a girls' weekend, but I'll make you feel guilty about it. I'll say like sarcastic remarks about it, or we'll end up getting into a fight right before you leave or when you get back. And so it'll turn into a whole thing. So the next time you want to go, you have to really think about like, is it even worth it? Is it worth the fight? Is it worth the hassle I know that's going to come with it? If not, then I'll just stay home. And that's just kind of like the reality. So I just wanted to give a specific shout out and we see you to all of the parents out there who find themselves in that situation, because I think there can be some assumptions made about you, right? The assumption, maybe even from us fully single people, might be like, well, you're married. You technically have a spouse. You can't say you're lonely. You can't consider yourself a single parent because you have the ring on your hand. So I don't want to hear it. Like, I'll tell you about what it's really like to be single, like, because I don't have anybody helping me with this and blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that's fair, because we're not here to compare realities and to say one aspect of life is harder than another aspect of life. Like, no, we're all hot. We're all doing this thing regardless of what the particulars of our situation looks like. But I think those assumptions, even especially from us fully single people about you all, can be there. And so I just know that maybe can add to that loneliness, because you kind of maybe make it feels hard to share how lonely you are, because it does sound weird because you do have a spouse, or maybe you just don't want to talk about it because you don't want to make your spouse seem like a bad person. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just, hey, my husband's great or my wife is great. They just have a job that literally takes them away for long periods of time, like the gold miners. So they're a good husband, they're a good dad. There's nothing wrong. It's just the career that we're in, that pays the bills, that puts clothes on our backs, that feeds us, is just intense. And so the reality is, like, when the other person's home, it's great, no problems whatsoever, but it's just hard sometimes because work takes them away so often, or maybe physically or mentally, for whatever, through sickness or what have you. The other spouse can't help. Maybe they want to, maybe they do want to be more involved. Maybe they do want to assist here and there, but maybe physically they can't because of for some reason. It's not always like that person is bad and they're messing up and I'm alone. It's just sometimes that's just life, and sometimes that's the reality. And so what I'm ultimately saying is that we see you, we acknowledge you. We know how hard that situation can be and how lonely that life can be, and just want to let you know that you have a home, you have a community here at the Single Parents Podcast. You're just as hot as anybody else who checks out the show, who's involved with the show. We want to hear from you all, you married single parents out there. You married single parents out there just as much as anybody. So please do what you got to do to share your story. Know that you're not truly alone, like as very specific as your situation might be. I guarantee there's lots of other men and women who are at home right now. Kids are trashing up the place, and you haven't spoken to another real adult face to face without kids pulling on you in what seems like months, and you can't remember the last time you sat down in a coffee shop by yourself, or even had an excuse to put on makeup or to put on your nice pair of pants, and you're just like, I guess this is it. I guess this is my life. It's watching Coco Melon 24/7 and cleaning up the same chocolate milk spill in my kitchen over and over again. You might be surprised to know that there's a lot of other people out there in that exact same situation. So even though you might feel alone, you're not truly alone. There's a lot of people out there who can relate, who I know can provide a lot of support and a lot of encouragement and a lot of empathy to you in particular in your situation. And maybe I'll do a better job on the show in the future about inviting in guests who can specifically relate and speak into that dynamic. And we'll yeah, you know what? This is my commitment to you all. I'm gonna do that. We're gonna branch out. We're gonna reach out, and we're gonna get those voices involved in the show too. So married single parents out there, we love you. We see you. You're hot. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. And thank you all in general for being a part of this community, for joining in to participate in this show, because that's going to actually bring us to the end of another episode of the Single Parents Podcast. I love you all so much. I hope you truly know that, because it's definitely true. And until next week's episode, don't forget, my name's Anthony, and you all out there, just stay beautiful. Bye.